That heaviest band is going to include the city of Chicago, Rockford, and Madison. Milwaukee and Kankakee are going to be in a lighter area, and of course, just south of there, not going to get much of anything at all. Just a complete difference from what we've been seeing. A few clouds, 30 to 25 tonight. It'll be a cold night. Northwest winds 5 to 15 miles per hour. And tomorrow, you can anticipate a day that starts off pretty well, but it kind of gets into the snow thing in the afternoon. Low 30s for tomorrow's high.
But one of the things that I always remembered about Dr. King was the song that he liked so much. And that song was, "If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody that they're going wrong, then my living will not be in vain."
Yeah.
And
powerful words.
You know, if we can accomplish more of that, then I think we create the environment that takes us out of the past into the future.
Who's here?
MJ, can you let him know that the artist is here?
Okay.
Thank you. Do we need to sign in? Yeah, please.
Said sporting was our high state.
One dime. One dime. One dime. One dime.
My name is Janel Young. I go by JY Originals. I am an artist, a muralist, painter, creator, community connector, all of the things. I consider myself a community artist because I really love going into different communities, neighborhoods, and having people tell me their stories and allowing me to recreate them visually. I first got into murals when I was really young. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and my grandmother had actually put me in this art program. I was about 6 or 7 years old, and it was a group of kids who were coming up with a mural concept. I didn't really realize it at that time, but I knew I had a lot of fun doing it. And so yeah, my first mural I completed around age 7, and then later on in life, about 7th, 8th grade, I was put on a mural painting team at my creative and performing arts middle school, and that's when I really discovered how much I love to paint. I went to Shenley High School in Pittsburgh, which had an IB art program. So I had advanced art all throughout high school. And then after that, I went on to study business marketing and international studies at Penn State. I did not really take any art classes or anything when I was in college. But once I graduated, I knew I wanted to do something creative. I ended up working in the PR industry, doing a lot of digital and social creation. And then after about 5 years, I was volunteering with a mural organization out in New York City, where I was working at that time. And I ended up getting hired full-time as a painter. So I realized how much I love doing big work and meaningful work. And I was able to continue to pursue that. So once I did that, the doors kind of started opening for more and more projects. I ended up doing a project in Pittsburgh and getting an artist residency there. So I moved back there for a couple of years, and then I ended up in Chicago.
Harry L. Austin Jr. I am originally from Atlanta, Georgia. At SAFER, I am now the Senior Vice President of Strategy and Innovation. When it comes up to trying to put my arm around things that position SAFER as a stronger, more adaptive, responsive organization, that's what my team does. I have fund development, which is consulting on how we drive revenue and grants and donors and funding to resource the organization. I have marketing and communications, which is about branding and market presence, and then trying to think about what is it our respective clients need, whether it's individual clients, whether it's funder clients, whether it's community stakeholders that we're trying to impact, and even our own internal clients. The first thing was like, hey, this wall is bland, it's ugly, we out here, we gotta do something, put some pop up here, make a statement, let them know that SAFER is here and have some type of beautifying impact on the community, right? And I'm thinking, all right, that works, but you got to do more than that, because to me, public art, and this is public art, it's not just paint on the wall, right? Public art has to be about engaging people, right? And so part of my diverse work history is having worked in environmental graphics and design, right? Having put a major piece of work exhibit into the Museum of Science and Industry. So I reached back to my days of doing that work, brought RLR on board and said, okay, help us shape our discussion for our search for an artist or a designer that can do this, not just somebody who's gonna paint the wall, but can do this. So we thought about what do we need to do to exemplify the impact of a Congressman Davis and all that he's done. But we also got to do it in a way that's contemporary and fresh and maybe a little bit different than old heads like myself might do it, right? Quite simply. And if you've ever heard Danny talk, he's a walking demonstration of commitment and telling the story of people's lives in community. So to me, the small tribute that we can do to represent his impact in terms of fair chance hiring, second chance work, community health work, is to have an image on the wall. That's the least we can do. And it just barely scratches the surface in terms of his dedication and commitment and his legacy. But I think more importantly, he's from around here, right? Coming over from, I believe it's Arkansas, and putting his roots down in Chicago and remaining rooted in the community. The least we can do is plant a seed and put up another tree to the man, right? So that's the way I look at it. I think Janel's use of color, her use of symbolism, and her ability to bring in a partner that could really do an image and a portraiture, not necessarily photorealism, but a portraiture that would be strong and impactful and carry emotion. And I think that's exactly what we got in the selection of this team.
My name is Thomas Evans. I go by Detour, and I'm from Denver, Colorado. Moving around all the time, it's like you gotta make friends somehow, and then artwork was that way of making friends, like drawing people and then giving them the photo of themselves afterwards. So like that kind of like stuck for a little bit. And I started out doing like a lot of portrait work. So I was drawing all my friends and teachers and stuff, and got really good at it. So I just kept going. But now it's like I still do that a lot. That's what like a lot of people know me for. But I like doing a lot of work with like tech. It's like including technology into my work as well. So I do that and try to like expand. Yeah. When eBay came out, and you could sell stuff on eBay. So I was selling airbrush t-shirts when I was learning how to airbrush. And then
big faces with little bodies.
Yeah, all that stuff, SpongeBob, that's Tupac, all that, man. I was like, so many SpongeBob, so many Tupacs, and like that's when even Big Pun died. I was doing a ton of Big Pun, ton of Big L's, you know, all those artists. What's up?
The legendary rappers.
Yeah, man, and then like, yeah, because it was kind of like all of that stuff all at once, learning how to price my work a little bit, and then learning how to sell online. So it was good just to like be able to figure out how to do that.
Planning a project like this is definitely a lot of work, but it's always worth it for me in the end. As far as the proposal process, you know, I had done a site visit at Sacred Foundation, and I asked them to walk me through the building, help me understand the people, the clients, everything, so I could get a real sense of like who they are as an organization. I was super inspired by that, and so in the proposal, I was able to kind of pull together not only like, you know, work samples of mine and my artist team, but things that really showcase our work in like social justice, social equity, those kinds of things. Telling the story of who we are as artists and what inspires us to do what we do and why we're the right fit for this project. It's very strategic, what you show, what you tell, who you work with, all of those things are super important. And really getting a firm understanding of, you know, the full context and background of a project like this, right? That's also why I thought it was important for us to have some sort of documentation of the process itself. So the design, first of all, abstractly in the background, it actually spells out the word 7, and that stands for the 7th District, which is who Danny Davis serves. Then we also have some elements like the housing. We also included, some elements that are resembling Stay for Foundation's logo, kind of the journey that plays into the letter S on the left-hand side, and then all the way on the far right panel, which is the abstract letter N, you'll see the water, and that has like this raindrop in it, and it represents people returning to their communities and making them more vibrant. I always include my tribal signature triangles in my work. It represents community, togetherness, supporting one another, because I think all of those things are so important for this community. There are also a couple of detail elements that allude to Chicago, the Chicago flag, and the Black community specifically. We, of course, have the amazing portrait of Danny Davis right in the center. This very powerful and uplifting kind of image of him, really showcasing, what he's doing for not only Safer in Illinois, but the nation. After doing so much research on everything that he's done and what he continues to do, as far as policy change and all of these kinds of things, it's just really an amazing story. And I wanted to make sure that that was showcased very vibrantly.
Be resolute of heart, make firm thy mind. The tongue of a man is the rudder of the boat, but the Lord of all is its pilot.
Davis, and I represent the 7th Congressional District in Illinois. When I graduated from the University of Arkansas, which was Arkansas A&M College, Agricultural, Mechanical, and Normal College, it was one of the HBCUs that was established after the Civil War was over, and as African Americans were being provided with opportunity to obtain higher education, my university actually started with 7 students. And then the gentleman who became the president came from the North, but he had an education. And so he got engaged, got involved, became president. He left the presidency, though, and went to become principal of a high school in the same town. And so it was a struggle getting the college started, moving it to where it became. And I am so proud of the fact that I and 6 of my sisters and brothers all went to that college, and 5 or 6 of my nieces and nephews. That was our lifesaver. So when I came to Chicago at the age of 19, I came here because I had 2 sisters who lived here, and I could have a place to live. That's what brought me. Matter of fact, I borrowed $50 from my father, who borrowed $50 from a fellow who owned a grocery store. And that's what I got when I came. I had $20 left, and I was in Chicago, my kind of town, the Windy City. I've always been inquisitive. I've always wondered about things, what made things happen. And of course, I was taught growing up that education was very important, and that if you got what was called education, nobody could take that away from you. And so there was not an African American in my little town who had a college degree when I was growing up. But people were kind of political. I noticed and learned that the principal of our school did not have a college degree when she was made principal, but she did live in the town. And the people decided, since she lived in the town, that she should be the principal. School I went to was a one-room school when I started school. And woman that I praise every time I almost open my mouth is a lady named Miss Beattie King, who taught me when I was in kindergarten, but also ended up being the English teacher, high school English teacher, when I graduated from from high school with 7 other people. And so I just kept learning, trying to study, going to school at night, working 3 jobs at one time. At one point I had 3 jobs. I was teaching school, I was working part-time at the post office, and I was working at Sears Roebuck right down the street when the biggest store in the Sears network was right there at Homan and Arthington. My dad had finished the 4th grade, and I used to say he was the smartest man I ever met. He had so many words of wisdom until it wasn't funny. My mother was such a wonderful woman that when she died, my sisters and brothers, and there are 9 of us that she gave birth to, we sat up practically all night arguing about who was her most favorite child. And my father finally got up and said, look, I hear you all in there arguing about who was Maz's favorite. Well, I want you to know none of y'all was the favorite, because I was her favorite. and so that took a little bit of the edge. But yeah, I just had a whole bunch of wonderful people, teachers, neighbors, friends, relatives, who were kind of the wind always beneath my wing. I went to college, I didn't have any money. As a matter of fact, I had 20 bucks when I got there. But I had an uncle and an aunt who lived in the town, in that same town. And so I didn't worry about room and board or food or none of that, because they were like family. And so they automatically were going to look after any needs that I had. I didn't have enough money to buy the books. When I was a freshman, I'd have to go to the library and do my assignments until I could get the money to purchase the books. Yeah, I just say, hey, I've been very fortunate throughout life that there were people who helped to sustain what was taking place and what needed to take place. But I've always had this fascination with books and with reading. You know, my mother used to say, look, you're gonna ruin your eyes trying to read by these little coal oil lamps that we had. We didn't have electricity until I was 11 years old. That's when the Rural Electrification Act brought electricity to rural areas throughout America. It wasn't just where I lived, it was where most people who lived in rural America had to use some form of lighting That was not electricity.
Once I went to one of the campaign events that was being held for him at a black-owned hotel on the south side of Chicago. One, he chose to do it at a black-owned hotel on the south side of Chicago. But as people were talking, you know, you have an opportunity to come up and speak to him in that forum. And he's just so engaging and personable. And you're going to get a story every time. So you're going to learn something. So at that time, you know, I learned a lot about his underlying background work in making the Second Chance Act happen, the behind the scenes stuff that goes on in the halls of Congress, right? And he had a conversation. Once he understood I was with Safer and he recognized me from coming and going, it was like he was talking to me, not to the room. Now the room was the audience, but it's like he was talking, this is just me and you having a conversation about what he appreciates about the work that Safer does and our ability to take his baton and run with it. So that was my big takeaway that night in just those 5 minutes, that there's a baton that Safer has to run with. Our leg of the race, whatever that leg is, and then just put it in the next hand to carry on. So.
I actually used to teach GED, General Education Development. And the lady who ran the Urban Progress Center at night was involved in community. Her name was Rosemarie Love. Rose was a precinct captain, and Rose and I would talk a great deal at night as she was locking up and as we were dismissing our class. And she convinced me to leave teaching and take a job. She was chairman of the personnel committee for an outfit called the Greater Lawndale Conservation Committee. And that was a period where communities that were undergoing change were called conservation communities. And the idea was to organize citizens to conserve what the community was and keep it from becoming a slum. I was always interested, so I took that job, and that led me really to working in healthcare, because we started something called the Martin Luther King Health Center right down the street here on Grinshaw. And we developed it into a community health center. Then I went to work in health and ran a health planning organization for about 15 years before then ultimately decided we had a committee. We tried to find somebody to run for alderman. We couldn't find anybody. I was chairman of a committee to find a candidate, and every person that we asked to be a candidate, they declined. And finally, I said, well, since we can't find a candidate, I guess I'll have to be the candidate. So I went home and told my wife, I said, you know what? I think I'm going to run for alderman. She said, who, you? And I said, well, yeah, me, why not? She said, you ain't even a precinct captain. I said, well, since when did you have to be a precinct captain to run for alderman? So I ran, got into a runoff. People were supportive, and I managed to get elected, and I've been running ever since. I am the main advocate in Congress for these health centers that you hear about, the Mile Square, the Near North, the PCC Wellness Care. As a matter of fact, at the time when I started working in the health centers, there were 10 in the country. Now there are 1,400. And we've been engaged, involved. These health centers now serve more than 30 million low and moderate income people all over America. I get my health care at the Mile Square, which used to be one of the main flagships in America. And because I believe that you can't lead where you don't go, and you can't teach what you don't know. In order to help people know that these are not just little poverty clinics. No, it's good enough for me if it's good enough for you. And if I'm going to be trying to get you to use it, I ought to be using it myself. A lot of people didn't use them because they thought they were poverty health programs. You go over there now, you get the same care you get at Northwestern, or you get care just as good as what you get at the University of Illinois. So you have to practice what you preach. You can't just preach it. You also have to practice it for it to become real. I learned that from my father, who used to say a poem. He say, "I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day." I'd rather for you to walk with me than just point the way. I've always believed in community engagement, and while we slacked off a little bit during the COVID, we haven't had as many, but we used to have huge town hall meetings. 500 and 600 people would come, 300 and 400 people to come. We'd have what we call a state of the district town hall. We have any number of task forces and work groups engaging and involving people. So at one of these meetings, I asked, what did people consider to be a major issue in our community? And somebody stood up and raised their hand and said, you know, we've got so many of our boys and young men coming home from prison and can't find their way back into normal life. And that is a big issue. And we formed a task force to look at and try and deal with the issue. And we worked on that for a number of years. We started having expungement summits. We created the expungement summits. The first one we did, I think there was 3,000 or 4,000 people there. Scared me to death. I thought something was going on. See that many people, because I was late, I couldn't get there. It was at the Austin High School auditorium, and traffic was blocked, and you couldn't get there. And I'm late, because I thought I had to do all do is run around the corner, because I lived near there. And people started coming, and then we just kept doing expungement summits. People would ask us in other cities to show them how to do them, in other states to show them how to do it. And then eventually, after Clerk Dorothy Brown got to be the clerk of the Circuit Court of Cook County, we started doing them with her because they had the apparatus, and we used to have 2,500, 3,000 people come to expungement summits. But we also were working on legislation and what to do about that. We introduced the legislation at a time when Republicans were in control of the House, and a Republican was in control of the presidency. That is, when President Bush was the president of the United States. So we picked up bipartisan support. Rob Portman was the main leader of Republicans in the House. Rob and I formed a relationship and a partnership, and even as he became a senator, a Republican senator from Ohio, He maintained his interest and support. So I was just telling some people earlier that when President Bush signed the Second Chance Act, I was standing behind him beside President Joe Biden, who was in the Senate at that time.
When you have a record, you have to overcome the barriers to reentry.
I had spent a large part of my youth in prison.
When I came across that point in my life, I just knew it was over.
I was released on July 9th, 2021.
So I was an 18-year-old kid, fresh out of prison.
Oh man, housing, jobs, how to be able to socialize with society, with people.
Safer Foundation helps remove those barriers with our tools, training, and support.
Coming back into society is a scary thing. We're the individuals that can help you get to where you're trying to go.
They get an opportunity to come to our program, address some issues and concerns, move into society slowly and with some skill sets.
Here, it's about you and your needs, from training and education to employment.
Safer was really like a light in a dark place for me to go to.
Went in, they assessed my skills, they wanted to know a little bit about me and how long I had been in, and they went through a background conversation about the skills that I had and what was I going to be able to do.
Resume writing, we have drug counseling.
Decline the occupational skills training or mental health issues, housing.
We meet you where you are to provide the stabilization to succeed.
We help individuals that come to our facility to either increase their literacy levels, help them earn their high school equivalencies, or transition them into credential programming.
What I was focused on was, all right, I'm here, how do I sort of catapult myself in a position to be successful?
And we go beyond the individual to impact policy at local and national levels.
This area of advocacy is very personal to me. I was incarcerated for 3 years. Whenever there's an issue that impacts reentry, lawmakers not just know, but they know reflexively that that road is going to go through safer.
You're dealing with an agency and organization that have a plethora of resources, and you can go to one location.
Our efforts empower clients across Illinois and the Quad Cities area.
I'm currently enrolling in IT program as well as the bartender program. So any programs you guys have, I will be in all of them because this is like a glass ceiling for me.
You know, I'm working and I'm enjoying it. You know, I never thought that I would enjoy the job, but it is. I'm enjoying the job, so.
Take away negative interactions and replace them with positive community relationships, character building, and a certain level of feeling as though that this community belonged to them.
Every step brings us closer.
Safer Foundation has been around for 50 years. The support that we provide can be the extra push that they need.
I know the work that Safer does. I know the opportunities that Safer gives. People who otherwise are never going to be given a chance.
I want my kids to be able to see success. Just put my mind to it and said, I'm not going back there. And it's been a long journey, it's been hard, and I've made it.
What did I achieve? Me, Roberto Gomez.
For like, this is the way to go. This is a real program that works with real people and change real lives.
The road to a better future starts here.
We've managed to keep it moving by, I've been all over the United States talking about second chance, and talking about recidivism, and talking about reentry, and some of the better programs, of course, Safer, has been the leader of programmatic activity, and we call Safer the granddaddy of reentry, the granddaddy of second chance, the granddaddy of helping people re-enter normal life and become productive citizens who are not liabilities, but who have become assets. But not just Safer. Like I say, we've been all over the country We've been in California. It's great programs up in North Chicago, Waukegan. We work with Prison Fellowship, and one of the things that, you know, from political vantage points, Prison Fellowship really got started after some Republican individuals had had their own experiences with Watergate and were convicted, and then kind of saw how criminal justice was operating in the country, and they too have been very engaged and very involved with trying to find a solution. I maintain that an ounce of prevention is worth much more than a pound of cure, but we don't do as much prevention as we could and should, so we have to try to catch people where they are. On the streets, they call it get in where you fit in, or fit in where you get in. So no matter what stage of life people may be at, there is some help for them. And that's why, to me, this work is so invigorating. So it's a long road, and we've only scratched the surface. I always say, don't get to the basement and think you're in the penthouse. And so there's still much work to be done. There are so many people with records and problems until you could start counting now and count to next year, and you still wouldn't count them all up. So the work is there to be done, and safer, as I just said, you know, there's nobody better at it than Safer Foundation.
This statement on the wall, but the whole process and the energy that Janel and you all's team brought to this, because I think energy is just as important as the final outcome, because now the challenge is back on us. Like, what do we do with the rest of this? What do we do with the rest of the facility? The bar is up here now, right? So let's get up and get at it.
Yeah, but I also drove by here the other day and looked up, and I said, wouldn't it be great if my mama and daddy could go by? As if I could resurrect them and drive them by there, I would.